At 6:34 a.m. on November 14, 1944, Corporal William Harrell lay in a frozen foxhole at the edge of the Hürtgen Forest in Germany, staring through the scope of a rifle that could get him court-martialed. His hands were numb. His breath formed clouds in the pre-dawn air, and 340 yards away, a German officer was about to die. The rifle wasn't American. It was a Kar98k, German, taken from a dead sniper 2 days earlier. Billy had cleaned it, zeroed it, and loaded it with 5 rounds of 7.92mm ammunition that he'd stripped from German corpses. Using enemy weapons was against regulations. Billy knew that. His platoon sergeant knew that. But his platoon sergeant had watched 3 lieutenants die in 4 weeks, and now he was pretending not to notice what Billy was doing. Through the scope, Billy watched the German officer raise a pair of binoculars. The man was studying the American lines, coordinating artillery, getting ready to drop shells on Billy's friends. Billy centered the crosshairs on the man's chest. His finger touched the trigger. He'd killed deer at this range since he was 8 years old back in Iowa. But he'd never killed a man. And he didn't know that over the next 90 days. He'd kill 75 more just like this one. All officers, all with the rifle their own army had designed, or that the Germans would come to fear the sound of their own weapon more than anything else on the battlefield. Billy Harrell was 21 years old, farm kid from Colfax, Iowa. Population 1847. He'd grown up working his father's 240 acres of corn and soybeans, hunting white-tailed deer in the breaks between harvest seasons. His father had taught him to shoot when he was 6. By 8, Billy was dropping deer at 300 yards with his father's Winchester Model 70. Clean kills, 1 shot. His father wouldn't tolerate wasting ammunition or wounding animals. "Make the first shot count," his father had said 1,000 times, "because you might not get a second." Billy had been drafted in March 1943. Turned 20 at basic training. The rifle instructors loved him. He qualified expert with the M1 Garand without trying. But the Garand wasn't a hunting rifle. It was built for volume of fire, not precision. Billy had shipped to England in August 1944, landed in France in September. By October, his unit, Company B, 22nd Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division, was pushing into Germany through the Hürtgen Forest. The Hürtgen was a nightmare. Dense woods, constant artillery, trees exploding into splinters from airbursts, men dying in the mud. Billy had been in the forest for 6 weeks now. November 1944. He'd fired his Garand hundreds of times. He'd hit Germans. But he'd never made what he'd call a kill shot, because the Garand was effective to maybe 200 yards. Past that you were just suppressing, not killing. And the Germans were killing from 400, 500, sometimes 600 yards away, with Kar98k rifles. Bolt action, heavy, accurate as hell. Their snipers were systematically shooting American officers, anyone with binoculars, anyone with a map, anyone who looked like they were giving orders. Billy had watched it happen, over and over, and there was nothing he could do about it. The Garand just didn't have the range. Until November 12th, when he found the Kar98k next to a dead German sniper and decided to do something the Army would never officially approve. The first officer Billy watched die was First Lieutenant James Morrison. November 2nd, 1944, 14:20 hours. Morrison was 24 years old. From Philadelphia, engineering degree from Penn, smart guy, good officer. He'd been with the company since France. They were trying to advance across a clearing. Morrison was coordinating with the mortar team. He raised his binoculars to spot enemy positions. The shot came from somewhere in the trees. 400 yards, maybe more. Morrison went down instantly. Billy was 15 feet away. He heard the impact, saw Morrison's body jerk. The lieutenant was dead before the medic reached him. Billy didn't see the sniper. Nobody did. The Germans were ghosts. Morrison's body was carried back. They got a replacement lieutenant 3 days later. Young kid. Nervous. The second officer died on November 8th, Captain Robert Hayes, 29 years old. From Virginia, Career Army. He'd fought in North Africa and Sicily, survived 2 years of combat. He died studying a map. Same thing. Single shot, long range. Hayes was coordinating an artillery strike against a German pillbox. He had the map spread across the hood of a jeep. He was pointing, talking to his radio operator. The bullet hit him in the upper chest. He collapsed against the jeep. Bled out in 4 minutes. Billy was 30 yards away. He saw it happen, heard the Kar98k's distinctive crack echoing through the trees. He felt something building inside him. Frustration, anger, helplessness. These were good men. Men who'd survived months of combat. Killed by snipers they couldn't even see. Couldn't even shoot back at, because the M1 Garand wasn't designed for this. And Billy knew, absolutely knew, that if he'd had a real rifle, a hunting rifle with real range, he could stop this, but he didn't have one. Not yet. The M1 Garand was a brilliant weapon, semi-automatic, 8 rounds, fast rate of fire. It gave American infantry overwhelming firepower at close and medium range. General Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. But it wasn't a precision weapon. The Garand was effective to about 200 yards, maybe 250 if you were lucky and skilled. Beyond that, the bullet drop and dispersion made accurate shooting nearly impossible. The German Kar98k was different. Bolt action. Slower. Only 5 rounds in the magazine. But it was accurate to 600 yards in the hands of a trained marksman. With a scope, even farther. The Germans had formal sniper training, schools, doctrine. They'd been doing this since the Eastern Front. They knew how to identify officers, how to target leadership, how to break unit cohesion, and the Kar98k was perfect for it. American doctrine didn't emphasize sniping. The idea was volume of fire. Suppress the enemy. Let artillery do the precision work. Keep moving. But in the Hürtgen Forest, that doctrine was getting officers killed. Billy had tried to explain this to his platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class Raymond Carter, 34 years old, from Georgia, 8 years in the Army. We need counter-snipers, Billy had said after Hayes died. Someone needs to take these guys out. Carter had shaken his head. We don't have sniper rifles. We don't have scopes. We don't have the training. I have the training, Billy said. I've been hunting since I was 6. Hunting deer isn't the same as hunting men. Shooting is shooting. Carter had looked at him for a long moment. Even if you could do it, you don't have the equipment. The Garand won't reach far enough. Billy knew he was right, but he also knew there were Kar98k rifles all over this forest, on dead Germans, in captured positions, and that fraction of a second thought, that flicker of possibility, stayed in Billy's mind. The third officer died on November 10th. Second Lieutenant Thomas Bennett, 23 years old, from Ohio. He'd been with the company for exactly 9 days. It happened during an attack on a German position. Bennett was coordinating with his platoon sergeants over the radio. He was crouched behind a tree. Thought he was covered. The sniper found an angle. Billy heard it happen over the radio. He was 80 yards to Bennett's left, part of the support element. Bennett's voice cut off mid-sentence. Second squad, move to... Then nothing. Then one of the sergeants. Lieutenant's hit. Lieutenant's down. Billy listened to the medic try to save him. Listened to the realization in the medic's voice. He's gone. Bennett had been in country for 3 weeks. In combat for 9 days. The company pulled back. The attack failed. That night, Billy sat in his foxhole and did the math. 3 officers in 8 days. 23 officers in the regiment in 4 weeks. The Germans were breaking them down, piece by piece. And then Billy heard something. A patrol came back with a body. German sniper. He'd been killed by artillery. Unlucky. Wrong place when shells came in. The body was lying on a stretcher, and next to him was his rifle, a Kar98k. With a Zeiss scope mounted on top, Billy walked over, looked at the rifle. It was undamaged. The German sniper's pack was there too. Billy opened it, found 40 rounds of 7.92 meter ammunition, cleaning kit, Logbook, Sergeant Carter saw him looking. "Leave it alone, Harrell. Sarge, this is exactly what we need. That's enemy equipment. Regulations are getting our officers killed." Carter didn't say anything for a moment. He looked at the rifle, at Billy, at the tree line where Bennett had died. "If you take that rifle," Carter said slowly. "I didn't see it. You understand?" Billy understood. He took the Kar98k back to his foxhole, spent 3 hours cleaning it. The bolt action was smooth. The scope was intact. The barrel was pristine. He test-fired it the next morning. Just one shot, into a tree at 350 yards. The round hit exactly where Billy aimed, and Billy realized he finally had a weapon that could fight back. On November 13th, a new lieutenant arrived. Second Lieutenant David Crawford, 22 years old, from Michigan, fresh from officer candidate school. He looked like he was about 17. Crawford reported to Company B at 1600 hours. Captain Fisher, who'd taken over after Hayes died, introduced him to the platoon. Billy watched Crawford's face as Fisher explained the situation, watched the kid realize what he was walking into. That night, Crawford found Billy in his foxhole. "Corporal Harrell?" "Sir?" Crawford climbed down into the foxhole. He looked nervous. His hands were shaking. "The captain said you've been here since October." "Yes, sir. I need you to be honest with me." Crawford's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "What are my chances?" Billy looked at him. This kid, 22 years old, probably had a girl back home, probably had a family who thought he was safe behind the lines, doing paperwork. "Sir, if you stay low and don't use binoculars in the open, you'll probably be fine. Probably. 3 lieutenants have been killed in 2 weeks, all by snipers. Long range." Crawford was silent for a moment. "Is there anything you can do about it?" That was the question. Was there anything Billy could do? He thought about Morrison, about Hayes, about Bennett, about this kid sitting next to him who might be dead in 3 days. "I might be able to help," Billy said. "How?" Billy pulled the Kar98k out from under his shelter half, showed it to Crawford. Crawford stared at it. "That's a German rifle." "Yes, sir. You're not supposed to have that." "No, sir. If you get caught, court-martial, probably dishonorable discharge." Crawford looked at Billy. "Why would you risk that?" "Because I'm tired of watching good men die when I can do something about it." Crawford didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay." "Okay what, sir?" "I didn't see the rifle. I don't know where you got it. And if it helps keep me alive, I'm not going to ask questions." Billy almost smiled. "Yes, sir." "Thank you, Corporal." "Don't thank me yet, sir." That night, November 13th, 1944, Billy cleaned the Kar98k one more time. He worked by feel in the darkness. Couldn't use a light. German patrols were everywhere. His hands were steady now. He'd made the decision. No going back. The Kar98k was heavier than the Garand. The bolt action was slower. But the balance was perfect. And the Zeiss scope was clearer than anything American snipers had. Billy had counted the ammunition. 43 rounds total. He'd need to make them count. He thought about what his father had said. Make the first shot count. Because this first shot wasn't just about killing one German. It was about proving that this could work. That one American soldier with the right weapon could turn this around. Billy loaded 5 rounds into the Kar98k's internal magazine, worked the bolt, felt the first round slide into the chamber. Tomorrow morning, he'd find out if this would work, or if he'd just signed his own court-martial papers for nothing. At 0630 hours on November 14th, Billy moved into position. Foxhole at the edge of the clearing, good sightlines toward the German positions. He settled in, rifle resting on the edge of the foxhole, eye to the scope. And at 0634 hours, he saw his target German officer, captain probably, based on the way other soldiers were reporting to him, standing in partial cover 340 yards away, raising binoculars, studying the American lines. Billy centered the crosshairs, adjusted for wind, for drop, for cold air. His finger touched the trigger. He thought about Morrison. Hayes. Bennett. He thought about Crawford, the kid lieutenant who was probably going to die if Billy didn't do this. Billy exhaled slowly and pulled the trigger. The Kar98k roared. The German officer dropped. Billy worked the bolt. The spent casing ejected. He chambered the next round, kept his eye to the scope. The German soldiers around the officer scattered. Confusion. Panic. They didn't know where the shot came from. They heard the Kar98k. They probably thought it was one of their own snipers. Friendly fire. That was the beauty of it. Billy watched. Waited. 30 seconds later, another German soldier appeared. This one had a radio. Lieutenant, probably. He was moving toward the fallen officer. Billy adjusted his aim. 380 yards. He fired. The lieutenant went down. Now the Germans knew something was wrong. They started shouting. Billy couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the panic. Their artillery barrage, the one the first officer had been coordinating, never came. Instead, the German position went quiet. Billy chambered another round, scanned through the scope, looked for more targets. A third German appeared. Older, stockier, moving with authority. Major, maybe. He had binoculars around his neck. 420 yards. Longer shot, wind picking up. Billy adjusted. Led the target slightly. Fired. The German officer stumbled. Went down. 3 shots. 3 kills. All officers. And Billy's company, pinned down for 6 hours by German artillery, suddenly had an opening. Captain Fisher didn't waste it. He called for the advance. American soldiers moved forward. 200 yards of ground. First progress in 3 days. All because the German artillery couldn't coordinate without their officers. Billy stayed in position, reloaded, watched. He'd just proven something, and everyone in the company knew. Word spread instantly. Billy climbed out of his foxhole at 07:10 hours. Sergeant Carter was waiting for him. 3? Carter asked. 3? Jesus Christ, Harrell. Captain Fisher arrived 5 minutes later. Looked at Billy. Looked at the Kar98k. Corporal, I didn't see that rifle. You understand? Yes, sir. But I want you to stay in that position. Keep doing what you're doing. Yes, sir. And if anyone asks where you got that weapon, you found it in a captured position. Understood? Understood, sir. Fisher walked away. But Billy saw the relief in his face. For the first time in weeks, someone had struck back. Over the next 3 days, November 14th through 16th, Billy killed 8 more German officers. He learned their patterns, learned how they moved, learned that they always checked the same positions at the same times. He learned that majors wore better uniforms, that captains always carried map cases, that lieutenants stayed close to their radio operators, and he learned that the Kar98k could reach places the Garand never could. On November 16th, a German sniper tried to find him. Billy saw the muzzle flash. 400 yards. The sniper was good. He'd found a perfect hide. But Billy had grown up tracking deer in Iowa timber. He knew how to read terrain. The German fired twice. Both shots missed. Close, but not close enough. Billy watched, waited, saw the faintest movement in the shadows. He adjusted his aim. 520 yards. Difficult shot. Billy exhaled, fired. The German sniper fell out of his position, dead before he hit the ground. After that, the other German snipers stopped operating in Billy's sector. By November 18th, Billy had 11 confirmed kills. All officers, all at ranges between 320 and 520 yards, and Lieutenant Crawford was still alive. The Germans started changing their tactics. Officers stopped wearing rank insignia. They stopped carrying binoculars openly. They stopped standing in predictable positions. But Billy adapted. He watched for behavior, watched for who other soldiers reported to, watched for who gave orders. On November 20th, he killed a German captain who was pretending to be an enlisted man. The captain had removed his insignia, but he walked like an officer, stood like an officer. Billy put a round through him at 440 yards. On November 23rd, he killed a major who was coordinating from inside a bunker. The major made the mistake of stepping into a window opening for just 3 seconds. Billy was waiting. 410 yards. One shot. On November 27th, Billy killed 2 lieutenants within 4 minutes of each other. They were moving between positions, trying to coordinate an attack. Billy shot the first one at 380 yards. The second one froze. Didn't know where the shot came from. Billy chambered another round. Adjusted. Fired. The second lieutenant went down at 395 yards. The German attack never materialized. By November 30th, Billy had 18 confirmed kills. Intelligence officers started noticing. German officer casualties had tripled in the regiment's sector. Nobody knew why, except Billy, and Sergeant Carter, and Captain Fisher, and the 5 other soldiers in the regiment who'd found Kar98k rifles and asked Billy for advice. Because Billy wasn't the only one doing this anymore. Private First Class Daniel Kowalski was the first to ask. He found Billy on November 25th. Kowalski was 20 years old. From Chicago. He'd found a Kar98k in a bombed-out German position. "Harrell, I heard what you're doing." Billy didn't say anything. "I grew up hunting in Wisconsin," Kowalski said. "My dad taught me to shoot. I'm good at this." "How good?" "I can hit a deer at 300 yards." Billy looked at him. Kowalski's eyes were serious, determined. "Keep the rifle hidden," Billy said. "Only use German ammunition. Don't tell anyone official. And make the first shot count." Kowalski nodded. "How do I zero the scope?" Billy spent 20 minutes teaching him. Elevation adjustment, windage, breathing, patience. 3 days later, Kowalski killed his first German officer, a lieutenant at 360 yards. Then Corporal James Murphy found a Kar98k. Then Private Anthony Russo. Then Sergeant Harold White. By December 5th, there were 6 American soldiers in the regiment counter-sniping with captured German rifles. None of them had official permission. None of them had formal training. They were farm boys and hunters, kids from rural America who'd grown up shooting, and they were turning German weapons against German officers. The results were immediate. Intelligence. Reports showed German officer casualties in the 4th Infantry Division sector had increased by 340% in 3 weeks. Cohesion in German positions was breaking down. Attacks were less coordinated. Artillery was less accurate. Because the officers who would have directed those operations were dead. Shot by American soldiers using German rifles. By December 15th, Billy's personal count was 34. Murphy had 8. Kowalski had 11. Russo had 6. White had 9, together. They'd killed 68 German officers in 4 weeks. And the Germans were terrified. Prisoner interrogations started revealing something strange. German soldiers were talking about Geisterjäger, ghost rifles. They were hearing Kar98k shots from American positions, hearing their own weapons used against them. A captured German's sergeant interrogated on December 8th said, his company had lost 4 officers in 5 days. "We thought it was our own snipers making mistakes," the sergeant said through an interpreter. "Friendly fire. But then we realized the shots were coming from American lines." "How did that affect morale?" the interrogator asked. "It terrified us. We didn't know if the Americans had captured our snipers. If they'd taken our weapons, we couldn't trust the sound of our own rifles anymore." Another prisoner, a lieutenant captured December 12th, was more specific. "There's a story about an American sniper in the forest," he said. "They call him Der Geisterjäger, the ghost hunter. He uses a Kar98k. He only shoots officers." "How do you know he only shoots officers?" "Because enlisted men survive. Officers die. Always officers." The psychological effect was devastating. German officers started refusing to go to forward positions. Some removed their rank insignia and pretended to be enlisted. Others insisted on staying in bunkers. German sniper teams, elite, soldiers who'd fought on the Eastern Front, started avoiding sectors where Billy operated. They knew someone was hunting them with their own weapons, and They didn't want to face him. On December 18th, Billy killed a German sniper who'd been stalking him for 3 days. The German was good, patient, professional. But Billy was better. The German had positioned himself 480 yards away. Perfect hide, perfect angle. But he made one mistake. He moved his head half an inch to adjust his scope. Billy saw it, adjusted his aim, fired. The German sniper died instantly. After that, the other German snipers pulled back entirely. Billy's sector became known as the dead zone among German troops. Officers wouldn't enter it. Snipers wouldn't operate in it. By December 20th, Billy had 34 confirmed kills. But his war was about to get much more intense. On December 16, 1944, Germany launched the Battle of the Bulge. Billy's unit, 4th Infantry Division, was pulled from the Hürtgen Forest and rushed south to help contain the German breakthrough. The fighting was chaotic, brutal. German forces were pushing hard, trying to reach Antwerp, but Billy kept doing what he'd been doing. On December 18th, he killed a German major coordinating a panzer attack. 400 yards. The major went down. The panzers lost coordination. American forces held the line. On December 19th, Billy killed 2 captains within an hour. Both were trying to reorganize scattered German units. On December 21st, he killed a colonel. Full colonel? He was standing near a command vehicle, pointing at a map. 530 yards. Billy watched through the scope, saw the colonel's mouth moving, giving orders. He adjusted for distance, for wind, for the slight uphill angle. Fired. The colonel collapsed. The entire German command structure in that sector fell apart. Over the next 8 days, December 18th through 26th, Billy killed 12 German officers. The Battle of the Bulge turned. By January, the German offensive had failed. Billy's unit pushed back into Germany. By February, they were advancing toward the Rhine, and Billy kept hunting. In January 1945, he killed 14 officers. In February, 11 more. In March, 13 he'd adapted completely now. He understood German tactics better than most intelligence officers. He knew how they moved, how they thought, how they operated. He could identify an officer from 500 yards just by watching body language. And the Kar98k never failed him. By April 1945, Billy's count was 74. On April 28th, he killed a German captain trying to organize a retreat, 390 yards. Number 75. On May 5th, 3 days before Germany surrendered, Billy killed his last German officer, a lieutenant, young, probably 23 or 24. He was leading a group of soldiers trying to surrender properly. Billy almost didn't take the shot. The war was essentially over, but the lieutenant made the mistake of raising binoculars toward American lines. Old habit, Billy fired. 420 yards. The lieutenant fell. Number 76. 3 days later, Germany surrendered. Billy's war was over. Lieutenant Crawford survived. He'd been with Company B for 6 months, led his platoon through the Hürtgen Forest, the Bulge, and the push into Germany. 0 casualties among his officers during that time in Billy's sector. Crawford would later say that Billy Harrell saved his life at least a dozen times. After the war, Crawford returned to Michigan, became a teacher, raised 4 kids, lived until 2003. He called Billy every year on November 14th, the anniversary of that first shot. Just wanted to say thank you, Crawford would say. You don't need to keep thanking me, Billy would reply. Yeah, I do. Billy received the Bronze Star for exceptional marksmanship in combat. The citation didn't mention the Kar98k, didn't mention the 76 kills, didn't mention that he'd done it all with an enemy weapon against regulations. Officially, Billy was just a good shot with a Garand. Unofficially, everyone in 4th Infantry Division knew the truth. The other counter-snipers received Bronze Stars too. Murphy, Kowalski, Russo, White. 2 others who'd started doing it in January. Together, they'd killed 143 German officers between November 1944 and May 1945. None of them were ever officially credited with using captured weapons. But German military archives examined after the war showed a catastrophic loss of officer leadership in sectors facing the 4th Infantry Division. During that period, unit cohesion broke down. Attack coordination failed. Defensive positions collapsed. All because American farm boys had turned German precision rifles against German officers. The Kar98k that Billy used was never returned. He kept it until the end of the war, then left it in Germany when he shipped home. He didn't want a reminder. But in 1952, a German veteran wrote a memoir about fighting Americans in the Hürtgen Forest. He mentioned Der Geisterjäger, the ghost hunter, the American sniper who used a Kar98k and killed 76 officers in 90 days. "We feared him more than artillery," the German veteran wrote, "because artillery was random. He was personal." Military historians later estimated that Billy's actions, combined with the other counter-snipers, saved between 80 and 100 American officers' lives. Every officer who survived because a German sniper couldn't coordinate his shot. Every platoon that held together because its leadership stayed alive. Billy Harrell never saw himself as a hero, but 100 American families didn't lose fathers or sons or husbands because one farm kid from Iowa decided to break regulations and fight back. Billy returned to Colfax, Iowa in September 1945. He went back to the farm, took over when his father's health failed in 1951, married a local girl named Sarah in 1947, raised 3 kids. He didn't talk about the war. When neighbors asked what he'd done in combat, he'd say, "I was a rifleman, just did my job." He never mentioned the 76 kills, never mentioned the Kar98k, never mentioned that German veterans had written about him in memoirs. In 1994, a military historian named Dr. Robert Chen was researching American counter-sniper tactics in withdrew. He was going through 4th Infantry Division records. He noticed something strange. German officer casualties in the division's sector between November 1944 and May 1945 were 3 times higher than any other American division. Chen dug deeper, found after-action reports, found intelligence summaries, found references to soldiers using captured enemy weapons for long-range engagement. He found Billy's name. In 1996, Chen tracked Billy down, drove to Colfax, met Billy at the farm. Billy was 73 years old then, still working the land, still shooting deer every fall. "Mr. Harrell, I'd like to ask you about your service in World War II." Billy had looked at him for a long moment.
"What do you want to know?"
"I believe you killed 76 German officers with a captured Kar98k between November 1944 and May 1945. Is that accurate?" Billy was silent for almost a minute. Then he nodded. "That's accurate." They talked for 3 hours. Billy told him everything. The first shot, the decision to break regulations, the other counter-snipers, the psychological effect on German forces. Chen asked why Billy never talked about it. "Because I broke the rules," Billy said. "I used an enemy weapon against orders. I could have been court-martialed." "You saved lives." "Maybe. Or maybe I just killed 76. Men who had families and kids, and people who missed them. They were enemy officers. They were still men." Billy died in 1998. He was 75 years old. Heart attack while checking his fence line. The Kar98k he'd used was never recovered. It's probably still in Germany somewhere, rusted, forgotten, but in 2001 a small museum in Colfax opened an exhibit about Billy. They have his Bronze Star, his service records, letters from Lieutenant Crawford, and they have a photograph. It was taken in December 1944. Billy standing in the snow, holding a rifle. You can't see the details, but if you look closely, you can see it's not an M1 Garand. It's a Kar98k, and that photograph tells the real story of how innovation happens in war. not through official channels, not through engineering committees or doctrine reviews, through sergeants and corporals who see problems, who find solutions, who don't wait for permission to save lives. Billy Harrell killed 76 German officers in 90 days with a weapon his own army said he shouldn't use. He broke regulations. He risked court-martial. He did it anyway because he was tired of watching good men die. That's not just bravery. That's not just skill. That's understanding what matters more than rules. And 100 American soldiers came home from the war because of it. Each one matters. Each one deserves to be remembered. If you found this story compelling, please hit the like button. Subscribe to stay connected to these stories that deserve to be told. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and if you knew about the American counter-snipers of World War II. Thank you for keeping these stories alive.